Hey guys, this is Kieran. This is going to be my first build video for ESO and my first build video for the new Morrowind patch. This is a heavy armor, sword and destro Magicka Dragonknight build, and to just kind of get right into it, we are an Imperial. This is not the recommended race for Dragonknight. The recommended race is definitely Dark Elf. You're going to get the most, you're going to be getting the most and doing the most damage as a Magicka Dragonknight with Dark Elf. High Elf is also a pretty good choice for this. You're going to get similar bonuses. You're not going to get a stamina bonus from it, but you're going to get a regen bonus from it, which is super helpful in no CP and just makes the sustain much better on this build than it currently is. You're also going to get a little bit of damage bonus from being a high elf, not as much as dark elf, but just a little something to make it a little more worthwhile. Since we are an Imperial, I am passively getting increases to my health and stamina. So as far as the stat sheet goes, I put 64 points into Max Magicka. You don't need to invest anywhere else, or you really don't need to invest in even tri-stack lifts on your armor. We're running 32k Max Magicka, 26k health, and 14k stamina with 1500 Magicka regen, 250 health regen, and 565 stam regen. This is a little low. We're not running blood spawn on this build, but this is a heavy armor build, so between constitution, heavy attacks, helping hands, and battle roar, stamina is pretty easy to sustain as long as you don't let it get too low in a fight. Spell damage is 1461, a little bit low, but once we start talking about the sets, I'll explain why this is actually a little bit bigger than it appears to be. 20% spell crit on a heavy armor build. This is 10% more crit than you're normally going to have. I'll explain where we get that from and why I chose to go with a little bit more crit on this build. Our spell resistance is going to be 21k on the front bar and 17k physical resist. If you buff that up real quick, you're going to get 26 and 22k, and on your back bar buffed, it's 29 and 26. We're running 1300 crit resist. This is a 5 impen, 3 sturdy build. We are a vampire. The Mundus we're running is the Atronach for the extra recovery. We're using tri-staff food, and tri-pots are our main pot in this build. To jump into the gear, we're doing, this is a, like I said, heavy armor. This is 5 heavy, 1 medium, 1 light. We're doing 2-piece Falcon Scoria, 1 in heavy impen, 1 in medium sturdy for our 1 medium piece. We're running Seducer as our sustain set for this build in a heavy impen chest, heavy sturdy gauntlets, heavy impen legs, heavy impen boots, and a sharpened sword to complete the set. Our second set is our damage set, Silks of the Sun. We're running this in a 1 light armor piece in impen for our 1 light armor piece for the build. And we're also running it in 3-piece jewelry and a sturdy shield to complete the set. Falcon Scoria is pretty straightforward. As a DK, you have a lot of dots. This set is going to proc on damage over time and drop down a meter that's going to do a lot of damage. This is just adds more pressure to a Magicka DK that kind of wants to be a little more offensive, and this build was made with being a little bit more offensive in mind. It was made with dealing damage in mind. So this is why we chose this. If you feel like you want to be a little bit more on the tankier side, you can definitely go Blood Spawn. Can't go wrong with that set on a DK. It's still very good in Battlegrounds. Seducer is pretty much a staple on all of my Magicka DK builds since I like to play heavy armor over light armor. This is going to give us 2 bonuses, a Max Magicka Recovery, a Max Magicka bonus, and reduce the cost of our Magicka abilities by 8%, which is really good because since we are in heavy armor, we're not getting the passive cost reduction from it, and being a DK, our abilities, especially our defensive ones, are very expensive, so this is an important set to run. Silks of the Sun, this set kind of got buffed this patch, last patch during Homestead. This 5-piece bonus was not benefiting from when you buffed yourself with Major Sorcery. This patch, they changed that, so this set and anything like it, like Automaton and Ward Maiden, those 5 pieces will all benefit from your damage buff. So this set is going to be doing more damage for you now than it was last patch, which is one of the reasons I went with it over something like Burning Spellweave. I like the Sun because it's more sustained damage. You're going to be hitting harder all of the time versus hitting like a wet noodle with Burning Spellweave and then hitting harder in that 8-second window. DK doesn't have a lot of options for burst, so I went with this pretty much because of the idea of sustained damage as a Magicka DK. If you disagree or you want to run Burning Spellweave, you go right ahead because it is still a very good, very potent set. On our jewelry, we're running 2 max Magicka recovery and 1 cost reduction. I definitely recommend at least 1 cost reduction on a heavy armor seducer build just to kind of get the skills in the sweet spot of cost reduction. For me, the costs I have with this are perfect and I'm very used to it, so I don't go beyond this. I went with 2 recovery for more sustain because it's really, really important in no CP, and because you don't have CP, spell damage lists aren't really going to change your damage all that much. You're not going to have the modifiers for your flame damage like elemental expert direct damage with master at arms, so spell damage in and of itself in no CP doesn't really do a lot. I really suggest that you stick with the 2 Magicka recovery for this build, because when you start playing it, you're going to find that you're going to have enough damage between Silks of the Sun and this enchant right here. On our sharpened sword, we're using the Oblivion enchant. This is 1.9k unresistible damage, and it goes through shields. Incredible glyph. Really can't go wrong with this for Battlegrounds. Our back bar is our lightning staff of the Seducer. Lightning staff just to make sure that we're getting the bonus throughout the build, as our defensive abilities are our most expensive, so you want to have those the reduced cost. Running the weapon damage and spell damage enchant on this. This is actually a purple one. I need to recraft it to gold. But this is just so when you're heavy attacking for resource return or you're light attacking for ulti-gen, you have a chance to proc this extra spell damage. It's going to help out with your heals on your back bar from your coagulating blood, and it's also going to make it so you do more damage on your front bar. I went with a lightning staff over fire or ice for a couple reasons. One being that fire and ice staffs were changed in that the windup is shorter, but to sort of balance that out, they made it so you get less Magicka returned to you. This staff returns 4.5k Magicka back a heavy attack, and when Constitution procs with this, you're getting a little bit over 5k back a heavy attack. It's really, really good. Why I went with Lightning Staff is it's going to provide, it's more for me a visual cue than anything. It's going to provide me with that cue that I see that I'm heavy attacking the target, rather than winding up with an ice or fire staff, letting it go, and then just thinking I'm going to hit something, and the whole time I was never really going to hit anybody. The staff that you choose is definitely up to you. I wouldn't recommend Ice Staff. I've played around with it. Blocking with your Magicka pool is really cool, but it really messes with your sustain. So I would stick to Fire or Lightning Staff, or if you want to use Ice Staff, just make sure you don't have the passives in, so your blocking takes up your Magicka. Get into the skills real quick. Pretty basic bar. Burning Embers, Stone Giant. What? Not Fossilized? I'll explain that in a little bit. Burning Talons, Flame Lash, and Inner Light, and your ultimate's going to be Ferocious Leap. DK has a lot of problems healing in a no CP environment, so this is going to be your main form of healing, at least for me it is. If you learn to micromanage this ability, putting it on as many targets as you can in a fight, and just sort of cashing in on it when you need it, and as you need it, you're going to find yourself being able to stay up a lot longer in fights in Battlegrounds. I went with Stone Giant over Fossilized. I've been using this ability since Homestead, and I love it. I usually use this when I'm playing by myself, whether it be open world or in Battlegrounds and I'm solo queuing. This ability is really great. The range on it is incredible. It does very good damage when it stuns. It does really good damage when it crits, and it's also going to give you minor resolve, increasing your physical resistance. It's going to stack with your volatile armor buff, and just extra physical resistance really helps, especially against stamina builds. This ability is more of something you kind of throw out to disrupt momentum. It doesn't go through roll dodge, and it doesn't go through block, so you really need to be precise with when you use this ability. You really need to recognize offensive patterns. Like, I'll give a quick example. A Nightblade. When a Nightblade comes in on you, stamina specifically, the bread and butter combo is ambush in, fear in, cap. So when that ambush goes off, that's when you want to throw this ability up, because you're going to be able to stop them and put them on their back as soon as they get to you. Gives you a moment to get a Talons up for a dot, put an Embers on for a quick heal, or to cash in on a heal if you already had it. Just get your own damage in. This ability is really good against Magicka Nightblades, Stamina Nightblades, Stamina Sorcerers, and Magicka Sorcerers. The Magicka variants of those two classes like to play at range against you. They're doing a lot of animation canceling when they're on the offensive, and they're not doing much blocking, so you can pretty much stun those two classes on cooldown with this ability. I feel like this ability, as far as applying pressure and doing damage, is much better against those two classes than Fossilized. Stamina builds, dual wield builds, two-handed builds, when they're kind of coming at you on the offensive, when they're winding up for a dizzying swing, when they're doing their blind and fury on you, they're not blocking during that, and blocking during that would cancel out those animations. So when you see things like that going off, that's when you want to use the ability against those playstyles in particular. You also want to use this if you see that they're kind of backing off, trying to create room, just trying to get away from you. You can use that. It has great range on it. I would not recommend this ability against Magicka Dragonknights or any build that's using a sorted board, really. Magicka Templar, it's kind of iffy with this ability. Their main form of DPS is a channel, so you can get this ability off reliably when they go on the offensive and kind of put them back on the defensive. Magicka Dragonknight, it's a little bit tougher. Most Magicka Dragonknights are going to be using Fossilize. Fossilize is a great CC. It provides really great positional advantage, and to regain that, you're going to have to do a lot of roll dodging and expending stamina, or you're going to want to slot Elusive Mist with this just to kind of use it and block cancel to get out of the immobilize and get back into the fight. I would definitely recommend using Fossilize against other Magicka Dragonknights as well as Stamina Sword and Board builds, and I would definitely recommend using Fossilize in a group, as Fossilize goes through block and roll dodge, and it's much easier to coordinate an ultimate dump with your team when you can just sort of stun them through those two things. I would also run Fossilize over Shattering Rocks, because yeah, Shattering Rocks, you're gonna proc your Power Lash to come out right away, do more damage. That's cool and all, but the positional advantage that you gain from using Fossilize, to me, is far superior than that one Power Lash proc. So I would run Fossilize over Shattering Rocks in that respect. Burning Talons, straightforward. AoE flame damage. It's your AoE immobilize. It's got a great synergy for your allies to use, and it's just going to help you proc your Valken with another dot. Flame Lash, single target spammable, DPS, pretty good damage, better damage when you proc the Power Lash off the off balance effect. You're also going to get a pretty good heal over time from this as well. Inner Light, I chose to go on this build because I wanted to bring crit back into the build. I am a heavy armor build, so I am not gaining the passive crit from light armor, and crit is so good on Magicka DK or any build in general that uses dots to apply pressure. The more crit you have, the more chance you're going to give those dots to crit, creating more pressure on top of things like Valken, Flame Lash, the initial damage cast from Burning Talons, your ultimate. It's just crit and dot builds go really well together. I also ran this over Flames of Oblivion because while Flames of Oblivion is giving me that little extra damage every 5 seconds, Inner Light is increasing my max Magicka pool by 5%, so it's increasing my damage across the board on my Sword and Board bar. So that's why I went with that versus the little extra damage every 5 seconds from Flames of Oblivion. I also don't need the weapon crit. This just gives me spell crit. It gives me everything I need. This is also a really good utility against Nightblades. You can just kind of pop them out of stealth with this. That you really don't have any idea what's going on half the time, and you can just kind of light them up. Ferocious Leap is our ultimate. Take Flight does more damage on no CP, but since this is flame damage and we're running the Sunset, you want to stick with Ferocious Leap. The damage shield you also get from this is also really good. It saved me countless times in fights in Battlegrounds, and I'm sure it'll help you too. This is also a great ultimate when used in conjunction with Stone Giant. Stone Giant is a hard CC. When they're on their back and they can't break it, they have no way to mitigate the damage other than their resistances that they're getting. This I like to use as my primary form of execute when an opponent's at like 50% HP. You knock them down with Stone Giant, light attack into leap, light attack into whip, and between all that damage plus dots you've got going on people, and if anything crits, more than likely they're just going to roll over dead after that combo. If you are running Fossilize in a group setting, you have a couple options with Ultimate, and by a couple I mean, where is it? Guild, there we go. And by a couple I mean Shooting Star. Shooting Star costs a little bit more. You're going to get more resources back from Battle Roar when you use it. It's going to hit for about the same damage, plus you get the dot effect with it after it hits. Totally up to you to run that. I would not run Shooting Star with Stone Giant, only because you're never guaranteed to get the stun with Stone Giant. You always have to cast Meteor first, then you're stunned to make sure Meteor hits unmitigated. So it goes hand in hand much better with Fossilize than Stone Giant. I also just prefer Leap for just about every situation, so that's what I run, and it's up to you what you want to do with that. For our back bar, we're running Coagulating Blood. Super underwhelming heal in no CP. I think on average it's going to heal for about 4k. Still pretty good as a kind of like oh shit heal. It's still pretty good when it crits, and it's still pretty good with Major Mending. So earns a bar slot on the build. I really wouldn't take it off for anything else. Volatile armor, straightforward armor buff. Dot's pretty good. Damage return on melee attackers helps with stamina builds as well. This is also going to stack with your Stone Giant buff, so your physical resistance is going to be a little bit higher than usual. If you're running with a Wardening group who's running the AoE armor buff, I would take this off, and you can either go with Elusive Mist for more mobility. It's also going to give you the 75% damage mitigation while you're in it, so you're kind of gaining the same thing that you were from using Volatile Armor. You're just trying to mitigate damage. It's also going to remove snares, which are really annoying in this game in general, not just Battlegrounds. You can also double bar Inner Light. This will make it so you have the 10% extra crit and 5% increased Magicka static throughout your build. Those two things in particular are going to help your Coagulating Blood. This is still a pretty good heal when it crits, and giving it, since it scales off your mass Magicka pool, giving it more Magicka and more chance to crit only makes this ability better. Elemental Drain is our third ability. This is the entire reason that I run a Destro Staff back par in this build. One of the things that you lose from running heavy armor over light armor is Spell Pen and the regen. This is going to give you both of those things. This is an amazing ability. When you cast this on a target, you reduce their spell resistance by about 5.3k. That's pretty much 5.3k spell resist you're going to get. And when combined with your Sharpened Sword, that's about 7,500 spell resist that you're going to have on a target. It's just going to increase your damage. Your crits are going to crit harder. Increase your damage, like I just said. Also going to get the minor Magicka Steal buff from this. What this does is when you cast this ability on your opponent, and every time they take damage, you can get 300 Magicka back every 1 second. As a Dragonknight, you have a lot of dots going off at any given time. Dots are damage. That's going to proc this buff for you and give you that 300 Magicka back every second. When you're in a fight, when I start a fight, I like to use Elemental Drain and then buff myself with my Major Sorcery buff. Degeneration is a dot. So as soon as I put this on and buff myself up, I have a dot ticking to give me this regen every second. This is pretty much an additional 600 regen that you can add on to the build. So 1500 regen becomes 2100 regen in combat when you're using this. Really solid ability. This is the only reason I run Destro Staff, and this is probably why I'm going to keep running Destro Staff as the back bar. Degeneration is our major sorcery buff. I went with this over Structured Entropy because I am an Imperial. I'm getting the health bonuses. I don't really need extra health on my back bar for this either. I like the secondary effect from Degeneration. Light and heavy attacks have a 15% chance to heal for 132% of the damage caused. This goes hand in hand with the Imperial passive Red Diamond. With this, I have a 10% chance to heal for 7% of my max health. So pretty much on Weaving or heavy attacks, I have a 22% chance to restore some kind of health for me. And like I've been saying, DK really struggles with healing in no CP, so I went with this just to kind of bring a little bit more healing into the build. Ignis Shield almost didn't make it onto the build. When Morrowind was in its PTS stages on one of the first builds, the Major Mending change to this was that the Major Mending buff would expire when the shield expired. The shield is incredibly low on this, and it made Major Mending almost worthless on a Magicka DK because of it. They reverted the changes in another PTS build, made it so Major Mending only lasted for 3 seconds instead of it expiring when the shield expires. This makes it infinitely more useful, as in a 3-second window you can definitely get off an Ignis Shield, Coagulating Blood, or an Ignis Shield swap, Burning Embers. So earned its way back on to the build with this. Also going to proc Helping Hands for stamina turn, and give us ultimate back when we use this as well. Devouring Storm is our ultimate. This is primarily a defensive ultimate. I don't run a lot of AoE healing on this build. This is one way to bring that back into the build. Like I said, defensive ultimate, primarily used when I'm outnumbered and I just need to stay up for a couple more seconds so my teammates can get to me and then we can start the team fight. It's a dot, does pretty respectable damage, and it's going to also just help proc Falcon Scoria. And the more people you have on you, the more you're going to heal with this ability. You're going to get more from Battle Roar back in terms of healing than you would be using Ferocious Sleep. And as this ticks and it heals, like I said, more people around you, more healing. That's it for the build. If you have any questions about it or comments, concerns about it, feel free to leave it below, and I will try to get back to those in a timely manner. I am, right after this, I am going to put together a little montage of clips that I've gained playtesting this build into Battlegrounds for the past week. It's probably going to start rolling right after this video, so if you want to stick around and watch that just to see how the build performs in Battlegrounds, you can kind of see the damage, the survivability, the sustain it has. Definitely stick around and watch those. As this was my first build video, I just want to thank you guys for tuning in and watching. Hopefully the more I do of these, the better I get at them, the less nervous I am. So just thanks again, and enjoy the footage, guys.